So, welcome. Thank you for the treatment. Kat, I believe I was listening from it was Kat, right? And was hearing from the kitchen. I want to welcome those of you also who are watching this week on YouTube and Facebook. There's a large number of you that watch and comment. You send comments into the office, suggestions of all kinds, and we appreciate your remarks. Also, the support that you're sending into the church financially is very much appreciated. This week I've spent an awful lot of time listening to and study Raymond Charles Barker. We're very fortunate at First Century because we have vast resources of information. Dr. Barker, Dr. Grayson, we have a few of Wade, and we just have a lot of information we can draw in. And I'm always looking for something that will inspire me, and when I tackle one of those old talks that are filled with spiritual gems, it's a challenge because they have a lot of stories that they would involve people within the church at the time in different situations. So you have to go through them and cull the spiritual gems and represent them because they're very, very good. Raymond Charles Barker was affectionately called by some of the senior ministers who taught me 25 years ago, longer. They say he was the Pope of religious science. He was a very colorful character and beloved by Ernest Holmes, and so his talks were good. He didn't present himself like he was a holy man. He was presenting himself like he was a communicator of truth. And there wasn't anybody really quite like him in the country. Today I have a talk that I've worked on of his. Our lesson today is unlocking your potential, and it comes from some of his great gems. So again, you're all welcome. We're glad you're here. I'm going to go through it and do as much as I can. It was a very long piece, but I think I've abbreviated it quite a bit. Barker said the universe is the operation of cosmic intelligence. It's a knowing element which creates out of itself. Now, we don't know when it all started. I tried to figure it out over the weekend. Probably some 13 billion years ago. That's when we think the Big Bang happened. But we don't know what was before the Big Bang, so we can't even say we know the beginning. The important thing to know is that it is in action right now, because creation is never finished. It's always a process. It's always been a process. The same intelligence, the same love, the same cosmic mind is behind all of this, and it's the reason for your being. It's the reason for my being. It creates out of itself in order to express itself. We are the ultimate expression of universal life. We're the ultimate expression of universal life, universal intelligence, universal love, universal goodness. We are the whole thing, or as he used to say, the whole bit. Now, knowing this, you can look at your life in a very different way. I'm one with the one. I am an expression of it. It expresses itself through me, by means of me. Knowing this, we look at ourselves in a much different way. We absolutely are part of it. We are one with it. Knowing this, there's no more thinking, poor little me. We see ourselves much differently. We see ourselves, look, you know who you are. Then you start to think of yourself as being vital, being creative, being important, being dynamic, productive. With this knowledge, this self-knowledge, you can really say, I am the one. I'm the person who can be what I select myself to be. Because within us is the know-how to be this person. Now, if you're playing your life very small and you're not, your head's in the sand, it's a whole different story for you. But Barker was suggesting within each and every one of us is the know-how to be what we want. If you can take a pause and go within and figure out, what makes you happy, and you allow yourself to dream big, to let your light shine brightly. There is that which is within you that knows how to be what you want to be. Now, you might not be it now. You may not be using it now. You may forget it. You may never become the best version of yourself, but you can be if you want to. It's up to you. Many, Barker thought, go back to some version of the poor me stage. I've been hearing people talk about the poor me stage for over 30 years. You just get back into a place of, ain't it awful, and nobody understands me, and what's happened to me, and you couldn't possibly understand. I've heard that line probably 1,000 times in my life, I swear to God. I've been a counselor. And the fact is, I can't really understand exactly what anybody's gone through. But I've gone through a lot, and I have empathy. And, you know, the thing is, if I stayed in my stories, I never could have moved forward. So most of the world, Barker said, will go into some version of the poor me stage, or ain't it awful, believing, as the religion of my youth used to say, I remember when I was a kid, my grandmother and the church ladies who taught me catechism would say, life is a veil of tears. I don't know if you ever got that one or not. Can you imagine saying that to a 6, 7-year-old kid? But that's what they used to say. I'm glad I didn't really believe it. So a lot of people in the world live with some concept of what's wrong with themselves and what's missing, and ain't it awful, instead of ain't it awesome. So, you know, if you're waking up each day and thinking, my God, this is really exciting, you know, because it is, it's exciting. You may not like everything, but it's certainly exciting. Barker said, I don't know what to do with people like that, honestly, who are caught up in, you just give them all the good, and they just keep on thinking how awful things are. I mean, what the heck can you do with that? Well, I very well remember 40 some odd years ago in my case, I think it was 42, 43, someone telling me in a program, misery is optional. And I thought about that. I thought, well, how can that be? Because the thing is, things can be happening, but I don't have to be miserable. Misery is optional. Now, you can just tell yourself and keep going towards what's wrong and what's missing, and you can dig yourself in a hole, you know? And then a couple of years later, I got involved in the teaching. I started reading Ernest Holmes. And right in the textbook, Ernest Holmes says, suffering is not God ordained. I thought, well, there is that idea again. I've heard it twice now. Misery is optional, and suffering's not God ordained. So, well, why? What's all the suffering about then? You know, why did, you know? And then I learned later, you know, I could see peace and joy and happiness instead of anything. So, misery's optional, suffering's not God ordained, and I can see peace, joy, and love and happiness. I can do that if I want to. But I got to really want to, because a lot of that stuff that's around, right? Here's the thing from Barker's talk. I am the person who can be what I select myself to be. Such a beautiful, important idea. I am the person who can select what I want. I can be the person that I select myself to be. Because within us is the know-how to be it. The spirit inside of me is wooing me, Emerson taught me many years ago. You can't really quiet spirit. It's always trying to get your attention. So you can try to, you know, not listen to it, but it always is there. And life, it seems, throws everything at us from time to time. And most of us say, oh, there's nothing I can do. But when you know that you are the result of cosmic mind, you can call it God, call it spirit, call it source, call it whatever you want to call it. When you know that you are the result of a cosmic mind, then you know that you're not the victim of life. You are the producer of life. I want you to hear that. You are the producer of life. You are caused your own experience. Yes, you're caused your own experience. You're the individual who can do what you want to do. Now, this is a very powerful person with an entirely different state of consciousness. You don't approach the Lord in fear and trembling. You approach life with self-knowledge of who and what you are. So this is a powerful person. People who learn this teaching really they are strong, powerful. This is a person who has self-assurance, one who has correct thinking, correct knowing, self-understanding, one who has the right use of ego, because you know what you are. And as you proceed to conduct your life, rather than letting it be conducted by the world. See, this teaching really causes you to be a thinker, an authentic person. You're not looking to the right or the left to see what anybody thinks or, approves of you. You're learning to be authentic. You're not being shoved around. You're no longer being put upon. You are now in control of your own life. I want to repeat an affirmative prayer that I found with Barker and do it in the first person. So when you hear it, it becomes your own word for yourself. I am the creation of a cosmic intelligence, an infinite knower, an infinite being. Within me is this knowing, this clear, correct thinking, feeling process. I am the consciousness of the infinite mind. Therefore, I'm spirit, I'm truth. And I grasp great ideas, and I produce real results in my world. All right, subconsciousness, you have this now, and you do it, and so it is. So as I move in today's lesson from Dr. Barker, I'm speaking about, seems like a complex subject, but he says it really isn't. I'm speaking about spirit, soul, and body. And this is a way of explaining the creative process. So bear with me. There is an infinite cause, there is a way in which it works, and there is a result of its working. Everybody with me so far? Okay, infinite cause, a way it works, and there is the result of its working. This one infinite mind, a presence, one creative cause, God. Now it works by means of a law, the law of itself, and it produces as a result the entire world around us, and it produces us individually. And then there is the body. So when you think of the body, you think of all the universe and everything, all the planets. We use the body not in the sense of the physical body, right? We're using body in the larger sense of all creation, the body of God. And that means all forms, all worlds, all galaxies. So there is this cosmic something that's always been. Because when you deal with the nature of spirit, you're dealing with something which can never be fully or adequately defined or explained. Yet we know it has to be. We all know this. We know it intuitively. This is why from primitive people right up to the present, they had to create theories about God because, they didn't know. We are all intuitively aware that we did not create ourselves. We didn't create the universe back 13 plus billion years ago. We haven't really created very much. But something else did, and that something else is always greater than its creation. Barker went on to say Jesus made it very clear that the infinite, which he called God, or the spirit within, the Father, was greater than himself. Greater because it will always be creating new things, new ideas, new concepts through him. And in our case, through us. In other words, we are immersed in an immensity of a thinking mind, a knowing mind, a creative mind, an inspiring mind. We are always, always in it. We can never be apart from it. Now, in your busy, busy days, and we get caught up in a lot of stuff in our day-to-day living, we forget for minutes and hours because we have things to do. A lot of things just running through our experience. But throughout that day, every once in a while, we catch our breath and we have a moment and we say, hey, wait a minute. I am in that which is all creative, all sustaining, all productive. It's true. I'm in it. and it's responding to me. It's working in my consciousness now. For my consciousness, which is my thinking, feeling nature, is that knowingness in action. I am the knower. You are the knower. We are the only form of life that we can know, because we are the only form of life that has conscious intelligence. We know, we think, we decide, we act, we produce. Now, it's the Spirit that's in you and in me, which is the cause of all ideas, which is the beginning of all hope, which is the security of the individual. It's there. So now soul can be thought of as the infinite mind working through an infinite law of its own nature. There is no disorder in the divine plan. Simply isn't. Perfect place, perfect time, all the time. There's no whimsy. There's no man sitting above somewhere saying, well, you do this and you do that, and I'll spank you for this, or I'll send you to another location for doing that. Barker laughed. So forget the idea of the big guy in the sky who's going to, send down punishments and do all this stuff for keeping a scorecard. He says there's no man sitting above somewhere saying any of that stuff. He said because we are dealing with an impersonal something. I'll say it again. We are dealing with an impersonal something, which becomes personal as we use it. Barker said for years I wrestled with that idea until I could finally wrap my head around it. We're dealing with an impersonal something which becomes personal as we use it ourselves. That while the creative process is impersonal, and it has to be, yet within us, within me, I personalize it. I am it, and I need to know it. And I am it, and again, I need to know it. Now, if I am this consciousness that is creative, then I need to know how it works. The question is, how does it work? It works through something that you've all heard before. It works through cause and effect. We are teaching always the law of cause and effect at the level of consciousness. We are knowing the old adage, what we sow, we reap. Now, most of the things we reap, we don't like so much. Occasionally we reap that which we do like, and we're very happy. Now, this infinite intelligence, because it's intelligent, has to work through law. Just as you have to abide by laws. And intelligence has to act through a law. That's why electricity acts through a law. Light acts through a law. Gravity acts as a law. Everything acts through a law. That is, except the individual who doesn't know it. There are many people who don't live with any kind of awareness, which is sad. They live what Barker described as a hit or miss kind of life. They take what comes along, they complain a lot, and they don't really do much very creative. And that's too bad, because they have a lot of power at their disposal, but they don't know that they do. And when I came to this teaching, I was told this is the best kept secret of the age. God in you, this creative intelligence in you, the hope of your glory. I mean, you have the whole bit in you, operating through you, as you. Now, when you know that in your present mind there is a source of all the good you will ever want, it's there, it's free. It offers itself to you. It gives of itself to you. It's there. Again, it's free. And it works through a simple law, and that is what you think consistently, you get. Once again, what you think consistently, you get. What you think consistently arrives on the scene of your life. Now, again, we go to the word body, suggesting all form, right? Everywhere in the world, and worlds. In the world of form cannot produce itself. This lectern, behind which I am standing, could not produce itself. It had no means of producing itself. It was created by a craftsperson somewhere. Dr. Barker selected it, but he couldn't make it himself. He selected it from a picture that was presented to him. He didn't produce it. It was delivered, and it's been here ever since. It could not create itself. Your body cannot create itself either. That which those two minor cells that came together in your mother's body created you. Even your mother didn't create you. She provided the means, the sustenance, but something in a much larger range of mind created you. And here you are, each and every one of you. And so everything in the world of form is a field. It is a field of reaction, never of action. Barker said, I often remind myself that if I drive a car, the car doesn't know where I'm driving it. It doesn't know where it's going. It has no conscious intelligence of any kind. It doesn't have any subconscious intelligence. It goes where I direct it to go. It's utterly without any field of reaction. If you bump its fender on something, it isn't hurt. When you take it to be repaired, it isn't like you're taking yourself to a surgeon. The car doesn't even know it's being repaired, so it gets a fender without any pain or discomfort. He says, but you know what's going on. Now, when we think about forms, they can't do anything. So we live with a lot of forms, right? They can't do anything. He says, when you look around your apartment or your home, some of you are here, some of you are in your homes, look around. Note every piece of furniture in the room. Where you put it, it doesn't know it's there. Wherever you place the lamp or your books, everything's there because you put it there. It can't say no. It isn't. It doesn't say I don't like it here. So this can be true in an office. This could be true in an apartment. Everything in which we deal with that's a form, a thing or an object, we're dealing with an impersonal substance that's temporarily locked up in a form, say like this lectern. There was a noted English physicist back in Barker's day, which he quoted quite a bit, who said the universe is a result of a mathematical thinker thinking mathematically according to law. And that matter is an infinite substance temporarily locked up in form. So everything you see is in transition. It's coming into being, it's going. That's why the philosophers, the mystics have always said that everything comes to go. I've heard that in philosophy in different places. Everything comes to go. Everything appears and then disappears. Nothing is permanent except concepts of consciousness. Nothing else is permanent. The only permanent thing about you is your consciousness. And Barker said that's going to be around for another billion years. And I thought, oh my goodness. I haven't heard too many people talk about afterlife and science of mind, but he said, your consciousness is going to be around for another billion years. And he says, you'll know it, by the way. You'll be aware of it, and you'll say, what am I doing here, and what am I doing over there? And he says, when you get there, you'll know it. You will be as you are here. He says, because the only permanence about the individual is his or her consciousness. That is eternal. This too, everything else isn't eternal. Everything else will pass in the way of the world. Everything. And then he was thinking of the building where he was doing his lesson. He said, now this lovely building, which is somewhat new, I don't know. He says, maybe in 100 years ago it won't be here. He says, I won't be here, so I don't really much care whether it is or it isn't. He says, but maybe sometime in the next 500 years, this building will be torn down and they'll build another one. He said, they put up in buildings in New York in order to tear them down. Seems to be the way. So someday there'll be something else here. He said, I happen to like it the way it is now. He said, spirit is that which creates out of itself. Soul is a law of cause and effect, and body is a world of form. So now let's individualize it. He says we have thousands of years of theological thought, reminiscing about certain questions, one of which is, what is the soul of man? And he repeated it, what is the soul of man? And there were so many speculations. And he said, it all got cleared up for us New Thought people, around the year 1900. Said it didn't clear it up for them, the old systems with dogma, but it cleared it up for us. He says, because the old systems of dogma are still worried about the soul. Often, I tell you, Ernest Holmes, who found religious science, every once in a while, like all of us, we're stopped. The ministers he's talking about. We're stopped on the street by a little old lady or someone saying, "Are you saved?" And he said, "No, I've never been saved, and I've never been lost." So, of course, the lady, he said, would shake her head, probably thinking, here's another unsaved person going to hell. He said, now, individually, Thomas Troward, one of our great writers, plus Ernest Holmes, who followed, cleared up the whole thing for us. The soul is one thing, and it's very clear, and it's very different. It's your subconscious mind which acts as a law of cause and effect. Now, people shake their head and say, oh, that makes it too simple. He says, because a lot of people want their concepts of God to be peculiar. They want them to be controversial. They want them to be beyond all comprehension. So we like to think, where's the soul? And so some of the great mystics have said, it's over here, it's towards the pineal gland, or the top of your head. Some of them said it's down in the solar plexus. And Barker was saying, I have sat in meditation classes. I've gone one year and another. And many years ago, which I tried to get my pineal gland and my solar plexus to respond at the same time. And he says, I don't know. All I know is I began to feel real funny and I quit. He said, I don't want any more of that. So he said, people have been trying to locate it. Now, you're going to say, well, where do you locate the subconscious mind? And he says, I don't locate it. No one can locate it. Freud couldn't locate it, Jung couldn't locate it, and the later ones that came after couldn't locate the subconscious mind either. But they know that it is, and they know that we have it, but they can't locate it because it has no form. It is an area of consciousness. It's a part of which I am. I think, I feel. Except in this case, I can tell it what to do. I can't locate conscious mind. I can't locate subconscious mind. I can't locate the feeling element, even though I feel it. So I may have a sore toe, which I don't have, and I could stand here, and be feeling, but that doesn't mean that that's the only feeling in my body at all. Because when you're dealing with mind and consciousness, conscious and subconscious mind, you're always dealing with something that can't be placed anywhere, yet it is, and you are it. Right? So here is an animating intelligence operating through a subconscious law of cause and effect, which you can control. I can control it if I want to, and so can you. And the result of my use of my subconscious mind is my world of form around me, is my world of form. And there it is. So I look at my office, I selected the desk, I selected the picture. The things didn't appear out of my apartment out of the blue. I picked them. And a decorator produced them because I wouldn't know how to produce them. But whatever it is, it came as a result of my own thought. Now, it's true of everything in your life. You either consciously or unconsciously produce everything that you experience in your life, whatever it is. Now, you're going to say, well, you mean I'm responsible? And he says, yep. Yes. So if you trip over a cord and you break a lamp, you usually swear. He said, but you can't blame it on anything, except if you didn't watch where your feet were going. It's not the lamp's fault. It isn't the cord's fault. And it isn't really your fault. So then he moves on to say, all right, spirit, God, soul, the law of cause and effect, the subconscious mind, body, this formed world in which we function. The whole thing is free. And the whole thing is yours. It's ours. And we can do with it what we want to. It's entirely up to you. Or as I said earlier, you don't need to take control. You can really just let the whole world run you. You know, I talk about that stagecoach where you can go in and put down the blinders and just be buffeted around by life. You don't have to take control. You can let the whole world run you. And he said the world would just love to run you. It sure would, and for most people, it works that way. The world really runs them. He says, watch the people, watch them. You can tell by looking at them that they're letting the world drive them crazy. They're letting the world run them. They're like tuning into the news to be traumatized every night, you know. They just, you know. And you say to yourself, so what? You know, ultimately, he said, you can only run yourself. He said, I find that a 16-hour-a-day job, I'm working on myself 16 hours a day. That's a full-time job, working on me. And do I run myself perfectly? He says, no way. Just like you. He said, I forget. There are times when I forget. So if I slam a door on my finger, I yell, I might even kick the door. He said, that's a pretty harmless thing. I don't worry. He says, I keep myself away from hammers because I always wind up, you know, hitting my own fingers. I'm not good with them. And he went on to have a couple other examples. He said, so you and I are the beginning of the end of, this was a good line, you and I are the beginning of the end of all of our problems. Now your subconscious mind is completely receptive to your ideas, amenable, he said. It's receptive to what you think. It's impersonal. It cannot refuse your ideas, just as the lights of this studio are impersonal. There's 3 technicians there. If they flip those switches, the lights they can't say, no, I won't go on. They have to go on. When one of the techs in that booth lifts a certain switch, they have to go on. They can't say no. Your subconscious mind cannot say no to you either. Now you're going to ask, where is God in this whole thing? And then he says, then people get so disappointed. He says, you know, they really like the idea that there's a throne up there in the sky with some guy, you know, sending them stuff and giving them stuff. He says they really like that. He says they like the idea that Jesus would run all their errands for them, right? He said, oh my God, they've tried to keep that man busy for such a long time. He said, of course, wherever Jesus is, he's still teaching. And he says he's not running errands. He was a born teacher, and he's still teaching. And he said, will I ever see him, or will you ever see him? He said, I don't know. He said, I don't think it's terribly important. I'm not going to chase around the afterlife looking for Jesus, I can promise you. He said, I know he's somewhere. He says, and don't you come ever chasing after me when I go over there either. He said, I'll tell you one thing. I'll be giving lectures somewhere. As I told you before, and the saddest part about it is there's no money in the next life. So I can't take up a collection. So now coming back to something more serious. This is the process of life, and an infinite inner, this is the process of life and infinite inner knower of ideas. So you have within you everything you need. There's an infinite knower. There's a law that will produce the ideas that you tell it to, and a result that will happen in your world. That's the whole thing. And again, it's simple, he said. It's clear. It's not fuzzy. And therefore, many people will say, well, I don't like it. I want to go back to the old order. I want my angels. He says they want angels. He said people want the mystery. They want the universe to, he said, but they want all that involvement. And when I was a kid, there were saints and there were angels and there was everything in the world. He says the universe is actually a simplicity. It's a creative process that we direct both individually and collectively. It's a simplicity which is producing a complexity for you and I to be whole. to enjoy. We can use it. He says, that's why we're all different. That's why your whole life is different from my life and from everyone else's. It's a simplicity producing an infinite variety of forms as we direct it to produce. That spirit, that soul, that body, and you are the king or you are the queen of it. You're the queen of it all. I'm the king of it. I determine it because I'm it, and I'm free to direct it. All right. And he said, that ends the lesson. So it is. So that was fun to do. So we'll look forward to your comments. And I do have a closing treatment from him, which I can use later.